Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the FYI Podcast. We're sitting down with Efrain, owner and CEO of Empire Arts. Efrain,
Yes.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me here. I'm excited and I appreciate the opportunity. Yes.
No, we're grateful to have you, man. I want to give just a little intro for people watching. You're the CEO of Empire Arts.
Yes.
You've been doing work with Hope Through Housing, and
Yes.
you've done work with our sponsors and done murals at some of the properties. You are a talented, seasoned graffiti artist.
Yes.
And so we're going to talk a little bit about where it all started,
Right.
but I also just want to give a little bit of your accolades. From what I understand, you've involved your son and your family in your business.
Yes, it's pretty much something that I've always, just growing up as a kid, my dad always brought me along to, his projects. He was a wrought iron. That was his business. And so he would take me out there, I was little. And so I always thought to myself, like, I want my son to be out there with me on whatever I do. I don't care what it is. I want him to have hands-on on whatever it is I'm doing. So just about like maybe 4 years ago, he's 18 now, but about 5 years ago, I started getting him involved. And, obviously he didn't want to go. It's a kid and like, do I have to go? But just the consistency of me just showing them like, hey, let's go here, just give them a little bit of money and get that feeling like, oh, cool, I worked for this. And I started getting him involved and he started really, but I didn't allow him to paint yet. He took on the role of loading the truck, putting everything together, the equipment that we needed, the materials and stuff like that. And so I always said to myself, I got to teach him hands-on on something, like what if he doesn't like school like I didn't, I didn't like school. So I figured, I always learned hands-on, welding, a lot of trades that, my dad taught me as a little kid. And I used those as I started getting older. So I always had something to gravitate towards, right? And it's something that I've always wanted to do. Like I know that if I'm doing something, I want my kids to be involved. I want my son to learn something in it. It doesn't have to be the art aspect of it because not everyone has that, the patience and the ability to just kind of see a vision and bring it to pass, bring it to life on the wall. And something that he gravitates toward, he likes prepping the walls. He likes, getting all the equipment ready. He likes running the boom lifts, the scissor lifts. I taught him at a younger age, just something. I go, okay, cool. How do I make it fun for him? So I would tell him, you take care of all the equipment, make sure that it's in the building, make sure it's charged, ready for tomorrow. And he'd get in there, he'll operate the boom lift, big old equipment. Who wouldn't at 15 years old,
that's cool, yeah.
And I know I would be excited. I'll be like, you know what, I'm going to go with my dad. I get to operate this big old boom lift, go up high. Yeah. And so, just showing him things like that he can, give him some authority in something, let him gravitate towards like, man, I'm allowed to do this.
Yeah. But,
obviously with some supervision and teaching him. And so I always want that for him. And now he's getting he's getting more comfortable with talking to clients. Like I'll be talking to some client over here and he'll walk around and he'll give them different ideas and the client's like, oh, okay. And I'm just watching him and he's kind of, he's taking that role of like, I don't know, that's my little salesman, He takes on, he has really great ideas and stuff like that. So I'm just want him to understand that you can do something for yourself. You don't always have to, follow a crowd, but you can do what you really feel like doing and believe in yourself. I always tell him, I go, son, man, you have so much potential for so much more. Like, this is just like, we're just scratching the surface right now. And look, believe me, like I started at 42 years old just to start a business, and here I am, I'm just growing. Doors are opening because I changed my mindset. I let go of all the negativity and stuff like that. And so I want to show my kids and, just people around me that I know that if I can do it, they can do it.
Man. Bro, I love that. That's exactly what we stand for here at FYI. It's just the amount of inspiration that's pouring off you already, is like you broke that chain and you're providing a solid work ethic platform that your father instilled in you that you're now instilling as your son, which is incredible. I want to talk about, because for your son, this is awesome to hear that at 18, well, 15, he's starting at 18, he's already, getting the gift of gab and understanding how to produce is what he's doing, right?
Yes,
he's getting everything set up for you to come in and lay the paint and be the artist. And that's a whole bigger conversation, right? Because that's in any art system, that's important. Whether you're podcasting, you have the people that are gearing things up, and then you have the host who comes in. So, I mean, you're really teaching him groundbreaking stuff. I want to talk about all the obstacles that you overcame to get to this point, because you say 42, but 42 is a baby when you think, and 42 is a miracle when you think of everything you've been through. And where it could have ended on those train tracks many moons ago. You could not be even sitting here. So let's go back. Let's talk about your childhood and how you grew up, where you grew up.
I'm the second of four brothers, right? And I have an older brother, which he's only a year and a half older than me. So, just being a kid, I always say this, my culture is the Mexican culture background. And my dad and my mom came here to the United States when, I always say that I was made in Mexico, but I was born here just because I was born here, within a month that they arrived here. So I was born here. So I always say I was made in Mexico. So, but, just growing up, my dad and my mom were trying to find themselves here, trying to make ends meet. I think a lot of the things that they were going through themselves, and not only that, my brother was a year old, and then I came along a month later, I was born. And I think, there was a lot of stories that I heard that they went through, just different apartments, landing in different areas, and my dad trying to even find work just to get food on the table. And I think through all that, my dad he was here, but he was kind of dealing with his own addictions, alcohol and stuff like that, and a lot of the things that brought us. It was very unsecure, no security in the home. And my brother's growing up, so my older brother, I always gravitated towards him. I always wanted to be right behind him, right? And we lived in. When we first came here, we were in the city of South Central. We were down off of 20th Street in San Pedro, somewhere in South Central. And, we were there for a few years. And then we moved to Compton because my dad knew he had a friend that did wrought iron, and they kind of came together in business. And so my dad he started moving out. He moved out there. And for us, we were kids. And we were like, okay, we went from here all the way out here. So we lost a lot of little neighborhood friends. And so my dad just moved out there, and we realized that, we had to just kind of get familiar with that area. And so my older brother, he was really into the whole like hardcore hip hop, like, back in the days, like the mid 80s. And my brother would always go I remember we moved right behind the Compton swap meet at that time.
Oh,
yeah. So we were right. And, in that 1980s, 88, 86, it was a lot of the Bloods and Crips. It was very it was like a lot of shooting going on. People just dying left and right. And so we were in that area. And my brother would always go down to the Compton swap meet and buy like the new tapes, Too Short, NWA, and we didn't have a radio in the house, so we would sit in the car and just listen to it. My dad's radio, we would put the tapes in there. And, so I always gravitated towards him, so I always wanted to be around him. So I started learning, just the whole, just that rap mentality and getting into that. And then I remember being in the basement of the Compton swap meet, and there was a guy in there. He was doing airbrushing, and I was little. I remember my mom took me there because I had some messed up shoes. She bought me some Chinese shoes. They were like $3. Yeah. And I would get excited over some $3 shoes. I was like, cool. But I was a little kid. But I saw this guy airbrushing, and he was airbrushing some shirts. And so whenever I would get away from my mom, I would go down there and I would see the guy. And somehow, I don't know how I ended up watching, in that time, I got a hold of the movie Beat Street.
Oh, yeah.
And that came out in 84. And I remember watching it. I was probably like already 11 years old, 10 years old. And I watched that movie, and I was so blown away, right? And I was like, man, these guys are doing some hard with spray cans. And here I am, you know, I loved art. I was already doing art, like on just paper, pencils. And I watched that movie, and that just kind of clicked something in me and said, man, my dad has all this wrought iron. He's been painting in the back his wrought irons with spray cans. And here I go, man. I go check out the spray can. I'm like, what's this? I'm like, man, this is like, I was just so blown away with it. I was like, so I was in elementary school, and I took one of the spray cans, and I remember watching the movie, and I called myself Fresh. I was like, man, what name can I give myself? And I said, I'm gonna tag Fresh. You know, just to sound fresh. So I was like, Fresh. And I grabbed that spray can. I took it from his, you know, his little shop area. And I went down to my elementary school at night, and I jumped the fence. And here I am, 10 years old. And I go to one of the bungalows, and I write my name Fresh with the spray can, not even knowing how to use it. But I managed to do the lettering. And I could still remember to this day, if I get a paper, I could draw you exactly how I did it. You know, arrows everywhere. And I remember painting that, and I was like, cool, I finished. And the next day I went to school, and, you know, they took us out, you know, in a single file line to recess, right? And I'm walking. This was like my biggest secret I never told anybody. I'm walking, and I look, and I see my name on that bungalow. And I'm like, man, I did that, but man, nobody knows.
You're like, I got fame for the first time.
But it was like so, I don't know, I was just drawn to that. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where it all started, where I started, you know, later on, I started just drawing names on notebooks in class. And I would charge little kids. I was like, man, I could do your name like this for $1. And they're like, cool. And I would do like Carlos, I would do James, you know, just do bubble letters, kind of like in the movie, right? And I started doing bubble letters. And as I got a little bit older, I went to junior high. And as I would walk from behind the Compton swap meet all the way to Whaley Middle School, which is on the other side of Compton. And, you know, it was a long walk. I had to walk all the way out there. And I remember one time in the morning, I was crossing the street called Atlantic to get to Whaley. And I saw this guy come out of like some bushes. And there was a big white wall. And he took out a big old spray can with a big tip. And he put class. Like, I guess that was it was his tag, his name, Class. Yeah. And I saw him, and I was like, man, I want to do that. Like, how can I get him? How can I do that? And man, sure enough, I started just, I started like getting markers. I started understanding the whole thing about tagging.
Do you get your black book?
Yeah, I remember
a black book.
Yeah,
where you would over it.
Yeah, I had that, and I always carried, you know, a Scriver, a Mean Streak, and I would tag on buses and. And I got to know that guy like years later through my brother. He got to meet him, and he became a friend of ours. And then I got into his tagging crew, and man, it was just everything that I just seen, like buses, walls, everything was just, I had to put my name on it.
Yeah.
And you know, as a kid, it was I knew that I had to go out there and not be seen, so it had to be at night. You know, going out from the house, my parents looking for me, and I'm out there tagging up on stuff, you know, and not telling anyone. It was just my own little secret. And
I've lived on both coasts. I grew up. My mother's from LA, from Southgate, and my dad's from New York. So I was born in Downey, and moved to New York as a baby. So graffiti art. So I'm from your same era. So Beat Street and was big. In New York City. It was huge. Yeah. So everybody was graffiti. What I was going to say is I know the politics in LA were a little bit different than New York City, which you guys had because you guys had a big gang culture. There's still a big gang culture, but New York didn't really have a gang culture at that time like LA did in the 80s. Like it was, and I know there were tagging crews, but that also was a problem on the street, correct? With like gangs, like actual gang neighborhoods, and then tag bangers they would call them.
And I think the whole thing that started there was because a lot of the taggers they started looking like gangsters, right? Mm-hmm. They started acting like gangsters. Right. They started carrying guns. They had like just the way they were dressed. They started representing this gang life, but they were really taggers. Right. So I think the whole thing it was like I think the end of the 80s which was like 90, 92 and all that, between the early 90s. Yeah, they you know, the LA gangs, they put a stop to that because they were like, man, what's up with these guys, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember being in the tagging crew at that time, and my brother was in the same tagging crew. And they got together and they pointed out, they found all the taggers that were from those neighborhoods. You know, you had, you know, whatever gangs were in Southgate, Cudahy, like wherever areas. Right. So those gangs got a hold of the taggers and say, hey, we're doing these meetings here. We need all you to come here, right? Like we're going to have a meeting. So I remember being there, and all the gangsters said, well, if you guys want to be taggers, we're going to give you a choice right now. You either get out of your tagging crew or you join our gang. Like It was either, but you can't have this tag banging stuff, you know?
Right.
And I remember my brother was in front of me, and it was kind of like, we were at a park and they set up like a line, like, oh, say, so are you getting out of your tagging crew, or are you going to join the gang right here? And, you know, I had a lot of friends go up first and they joined the gang. They went that way.
Wow.
And I'm sitting here as a younger brother. I'm like, I'm going to go wherever my brother goes. If he goes and decides he's going to join that gang, then I'm following him, right? And thank God to this day, I haven't even thanked him for this, but I will pretty soon. We'll probably see the show. But, you know, I just want to thank him because he said, you know what, I'm done. I'm going this way.
Nice.
And I followed that.
Wow, it's amazing. So if your brother, this is important for him to see. If your brother had chose, all right, I'm gonna get with the set and gangbang. Oh, your whole life changes because now you would have went that way, and now you're officially in a gang. And
that changes everything. My whole life, my journey. And you know, just because his choice, you know, it made an impact on me. So I followed him, and I said, you know what? That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm going that way.
Wow.
And you know, a lot of these guys that went up first and they went towards the...
they're dead today. Or in prison.
I've already heard, you know, a handful of them just didn't make it, you know. And you know, and I'm very grateful for that, for my brother just having that mindset of saying, you know what, okay, well, I'm not going to join the gang. And so that saved me.
Man, that's important for the audience to hear that. When we think that our decisions don't matter or people aren't watching, you never know who's watching. Your younger brother, cousin, a friend.
Yes.
Everything we post, everything we do in life, we're setting an example. And not to get all spiritual, but, you know, I'm just saying, like, people watch. If you're doing the right thing, you don't know who you're affecting. That's like, man, whatever Paul decides to do, I'm gonna do it. That's a great affirmation. Thank you for saying that.
And you know, and that, I mean, till this day, I mean, you know, I was whatever at that time. I think I was 17 years old or 16, 17, whatever it was at that time. But it has an impact on me now because now I know that my choices is going to affect my son, is going to make an impact on my daughters or whoever, you know, a friend that's nearby, you know, a best friend. My decisions are going to make an impact on somebody.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it could be a life-changing, you know, a story. It could change your whole dynamic of your journey, of your life. And I know that I don't think I would be here if I would have chosen that route.
Yeah.
Because to me, it was, and so now, whenever I have friends from back in the days that made it through that. And, you know, whenever I meet people that were in that era of the tag banging days and, you know, the early 90s, man, like I'm so like, you know, I'm just, it's amazing to see them here because they made it through. Yeah. A lot of youth didn't make it through that, you know, and I'm one of them that made it here. And so for me, I still, you know, just being a knucklehead, even though I knew that the gangs had put a green light on the taggers and stuff like that, I was a knucklehead. I still went out there and did it, knowing my consequences. If I get caught, man, they're gonna kill me right here. So, you know,
what was that? Was it what do you think that was? Was that the creative in you, or was it because obviously you made a decision not to be in a gang, so you didn't want to gang bang, and you weren't on that level of like, you know, you didn't want to like sell drugs and gang bang or shoot people. So you were more. Was it just getting the fame?
No,
or was it the art, like being creative? What was it?
It was you know, to be honest with you, it was the adrenaline rush of being in the middle of the street, you know, cars going by, and you're just there, you know, vandalizing this wall and putting your name there. You know, that's what kept me doing it. And you know, and I had that one incident where, you know, like you said, many moons ago, I wouldn't have been here. You know, I took it upon myself and my friend and said, you know, even it was so hot at that moment that, you know, we shouldn't have been out there painting or tagging. And so we decided to come up on this wall, and we were there in daylight, and we were there painting. You know, he got his spot, I got my spot, and, you know, you can see the main intersection just maybe about 50 yards away. You can see the street, but we're in like a train track section, and we're there painting, and all of a sudden we see this white car drive up, you know, old Cutlass, you know, a Cutlass, and I look at it, but I turn around and I keep painting. And I turned around again, and I started seeing all these people get off, all these gangsters get off. And I turned around, like, I looked at my friend, and I said, hey, we got to go. Let's go. And I could see them getting off. So they must have passed by, saw us painting.
Saw you.
They came back. And I saw one dude get off, and he had like a tank top, a white tank top. And I saw him started walking towards me. He started like yelling at me. And he's like, hey, come here. And I'm like, I'm out of here. I turned around. I left my bag there with the paint. And I just turned around and started running. And he started running towards me. And I looked back, and he's running. And I look back again, and he's running with a gun pointed on my back. And he said, stop, bro, I'm going to shoot you. And I kept running, and my friend's like way ahead of me. And I'm like, don't shoot. And I'm running as fast as I could. And I could almost feel like my back with like some, I don't know, I was thinking of like a hot pain or something, like just waiting for that noise.
Ricky and Boys in the Hood.
Yeah, I was just waiting for that I don't know, something to hit me in the back.
Yeah.
And thank God that he didn't pull the trigger, because I was able to, I remember jumping over the in between two trains, and I jumped over to the other side, and I climbed on one of the trains, and I just dropped all the way down. And I was in there for, I'm not lying, a good like 6-7 hours. I was stuck in there.
Wow.
And I had like an asthma attack. I didn't think I was gonna survive that day. And I can hear them walking around. Yeah.
Oh man.
And man, thank God that they didn't think about coming into, you know,
You would have been stuck.
So that was one of my moments that I always reflect on. Like, thank God that, you know, there's a purpose behind why I'm here.
Yeah.
And, you know, God spared my life at that moment, because I believe that, you know, whether it's been 25 years or whatever it is, there's a purpose why I'm here. Mm-hmm. So my purpose, you know, I kind of found my purpose in art, because I believe that we all have a gift that we share to the world. I think we have to help others, right, in our journey, even though we've been through the worst situations, you know, having breakthroughs and all that. We have to share that to bring hope to others. And now I know that when I started kind of realizing that, man, I went through all that and I'm still here. Man, what am I doing with my time here? How can I make an impact in this world? So if I'm gone tomorrow, you know, I know that my kids are going to go sit in one of my murals, probably drink coffee, like, man, my dad painted this, you know? Like, or you know, a restaurant that has my artwork, they could go there and say, man, my dad painted this, you know? Yeah. Or I was with my dad painting this, you know? I know the art, I'm leaving something behind. Yeah. And I'm going to keep doing it and doing it. And my goal is to make an impact and share my gift to other youth, you know? The youth of today. There's a lot of talented kids out there that are just waiting to find those resources, or someone that could come and guide them in the right direction. Like, hey, you know what? You can actually put that artwork to scale on this large wall, and you can make a living off of that. You know, you can make something positive in your community with your gift. Yeah. You know, and I think that's why I live my days every day, and I make the best of them. You know, I get people like, man, why are you always so happy? Why you always just, you know, I'm just living life as I got to be grateful for today. Tomorrow has his word of his own. Today is my day. Today, what can I do to make a difference today? Yeah, absolutely. And that's how I live it every day. I tell my son, like, son, it's today counts. Like, you know, what you want to, yesterday was gone, you know, you did whatever. What are you going to change today to make a difference tomorrow?
Yeah.
And I always bring that to the table, and that's where I'm at. My goal now is to, my goal for Empire Arts is to open a learning facility where I could bring, just youth or even adults that have this gift, because it's never too late.
Yeah.
And how can I put this on a wall? How can I design a T-shirt with my art or something? Show them that even if it's just art, your passion, your gift of art, you can make something out of it. You could create a business. You could impact your community. You can impact other people, and that's the main goal here, is to continue that and live out that, so that way, when I'm not here, I know that I'd help people get out of that same lifestyle where they could create something for themselves, And just recently, I've been going to this halfway home, and also, I think it was last year. I went there last year to this halfway home in South Central, and you get a lot of people just coming out of jail. A lot of men, a lot of youth, young men, and older men that come, been doing 25 years or 20 years. And I went there, and I was teaching them about lettering. How you could, do a sign painting, how you could transfer from a print on a paper, you could transfer it onto a wall. And man, just sharing and hoping that I can impact one person out of the 15 that decided to join that little class that we set up,
Yeah.
And if I can make an impact on one person, I've won that day, I've already conquered something,
No doubt.
And and sure enough, they came over and they were so in tune. I let them get hands-on getting the paintbrush, how to fill in the letters, do some drop shadows, and these guys were just really in tune with it, and I was sharing with them. I was just like you. I was into drugs, just in and out of jail, just going to jail and doing community service, and just always in the system, doing something. And so my thing is to, even that, if I could serve in that area and help someone, then I'm going to do it.
I love that, dude.
Yeah.
No, that's incredible. I want to stay on this. You made me think of something when you said about staying in the present and everything you went through. And it's like, they say that, today's a gift. That's
Yes.
why they call it the present.
Yes.
And I heard that someplace, and it hit me different. Today's a gift. That's why it's called the present.
Yes, the present.
Stay in the present. Be grateful for what we have.
Yes.
We're grateful when we get a gift. You're
Yes.
grateful for today. God gave us another
Yes,
day.
exactly.
Stay grateful
Amen.
on that. So I love that you nailed that. Another thing you mentioned I want to talk about. I don't know if you ever watch the movie Saving Private Ryan.
Yes.
But at the end when the guy's at the grave of Tom Hanks' character and he's crying, and then you realize, oh, this old man is Ryan. He's the
Right.
guy that they all went in and saved, and they all died.
Yeah.
And he's crying, and he's like, tell me I was a good man, to his wife, because he looks at Tom Hanks' grave and says, I lived the best life I could.
Right.
Because at the end, Tom Hanks, before he took his last breath, he said, make it count, dude.
Make it count, yes.
We didn't make it,
Yeah.
but you did.
Yeah, make it count.
So I like what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's like, for all the people who didn't make it out of that life,
Yeah.
I think of that myself all the time, because I come from a background of addiction as
Yes.
well. And I think of my friends that didn't make it, or dude, some of them are still with us, but they're gone.
Yes.
They're mentally gone.
Yes.
They're not making
or
it
you know,
through
going
life.
around that same mountain where they're living that same
Yeah, they're
lifestyle.
still in
Yeah.
addiction. And I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, I was lucky to get sober so young. I
Yeah.
was 20 because I was getting in so much trouble.
Right.
And by the grace of God, I found rehab, and my life has been amazing,
Right.
But I guess it's like survivor's guilt.
Yes.
Sometimes I'm like, God, why'd you bless me?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I have to learn to go, well, because also I do the work. I stay sober.
Yes.
So we got to do the work. And then you go,
Yes.
oh, that's why God, we're doing the work.
Yes.
And, but I love that you said that, man. So I think that you feeling like every day's a gift.
Yes.
And that you're giving back now, which
Yes.
I'd love to talk offline. I'd love to get involved too in any way I can in helping. I try to give back as well wherever I can, but especially people who've been through the kind of background I have.
Yes.
But yeah, man, I love everything you're saying, dude. It's really inspiring. So today, tell me a little bit about how you got involved with Hope Through Housing and how you came to us doing the work that you're doing.
And it was through I believe it was through Instagram. It was sharing some of my artwork like that, and Mrs. Joseph reached out to me and she said, "Hey, I love what you do, and I have a few kids here that like art." And we started, just talking through Instagram, and I was like, I would love to go out there and just kind of give them a little story behind, how I got into art. I think that would help them, get inspired with their art. And she said, "Wow, let's make it happen." And so, man, I got my projector. I did a slideshow and everything, and I went in there. And this was before she even asked me to paint anything, and I went in there and I started doing a lot of slideshows, from before, just graffiti. And I'm like, man, these kids are like, there's a few kids in there that love art. And so I started sharing my story, and I was sharing what I do now, these big murals, this painting I did in Arizona, a big building. And they were really blown away with that. And just seeing these kids, like, wow, like after that, I just kind of did a little walkthrough, and some of the kids were showing me their art. And this one particular girl, she was very shy, very insecure about her art. And she showed me her art, and I was like, man, that looks like, at her age, I was nowhere near doing that. Like, she's got a talent. And so, I was just showing her, like, look, if you do your shading on this side, think about the light, how it hits it. And she was just like, thank you so much. And it's just, that's how her and I just kind of started communicating a lot. We started, just build a relationship through that. And then she said, hey, can you come here? And I want to do some lettering. And we want this mural on this wall. Can you do a mock-up and all that? And so I just started communicating with her more. And, we're trying to plan it out to where I can go back and just do another session with the kids and, just, inspire other kids.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, she asked me to do some lettering across her whole, like, some inspiring words, motivational words and stuff like that. So she's very, we talk about God a lot because she's very, just big believer, and I am too. She went to my church, and it's just very cool. We have a relationship that way. And I love the fact, man, her passion to just be there for the kids, it's amazing. Like, I think about it, like, if I had someone like her when I was a kid, I think I would have went a whole different direction in my life. Just because, just growing up, I didn't have no mentors, no one to guide me and say, hey, if you could do this, and, you have, or believe in me in any other area. And so I love her because she gives me that, she inspires me to be even more in that area. Like, how can I be like her, like really go out there and get a group of kids and just show them and teach them. And so, yeah, our relationship is really cool. She's always, just asking me questions, and she goes, oh, I talked to these people about, our organization, and I shared with them your story, and they're going to contact you. And I was like, that's so cool. Like,
I love that, man.
And to me, I love sharing my story, and I love to share a little bit about it. And, I just never thought that she would, continue to share it. But, hey, that's what I'm here for, just to make a difference in what I'm doing, and really not just being on the sidelines, but really stepping up and being that person where somebody could come to, and even just, some encouragement as to what I've been through. How did you overcome this? I was in a bike life too. I was in a bike club for like 7-8 years, and, just super destructive. Like, just everything was just so toxic. It's just like, man, just living that bar life. Wednesday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday nights. It was just like, riding in the middle of the midnight, just, I don't know how I keep my bike up, but, just thank God that I made it alive home. And I think those are the main things that we have to reflect on and think about it. Like, why are we here? Like, God, he got us through that. Like, there's a purpose and there's a reason why.
Yeah.
But, we sit back and we're like, cool, man, good luck, man. Like, nothing but luck. But no, it's just a divine moment that God allowed you to make it home.
Yeah. But, it's also an everyday thing. What's Mike Tyson say? When God favors you,
yes,
so does the devil.
Yes.
So it's every day you got to keep in mind, like we go, well, I'm still here. I must be doing something right. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe. I think of that all the time with the content I create. Yes. I'm like, dang, bro, the devil could throw blessings in front of you too.
Yes.
So it's important to stay actively what you're doing. You've had angels around you your whole life. Think about your brother's decision. Yeah. Think about Miss Joseph. Miss Joseph. These are angels in your life that have made decisions at moments, right? Now you have the opportunity to be an angel to other people, which is what you're doing. Being part of the bike club, being part of the tag band. This is the devil's throwing toys at you.
Right.
So sometimes people, like, I knew people who sold drugs for years that did fine. Mm-hmm. They had the life. You're like, then I know people, they like sold drugs a little bit and they were like in and out of county. Yes. Then they'd get like, they're driving without a license, go away on a county lid for a year. Yeah. You're like, dude, this guy's not good at being a criminal. Right. I've actually seen people in life actually doing pretty well. Right. And you're like, not that I co-sign it, but I'm like, damn, why are they doing so well? I'm like, the devil likes people too.
Yes.
So those people also don't have faith. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it's like we have choices to make, and you're making the right choices now. Yes. So I think you're right. I think God is favoring you. Yes. So stay active, bro. Yes. Stay. This is real activity.
Yes.
Gangbanging and stuff. I could get heat from people, but to me, that's not about being active. What's active is when a man goes to work, sets an example for his son, sets an example for other people. This is real stuff you're doing, man. I'm really honored to sit here and hear your story. Let's move before we close out. I want to know about your company now, Empire. Like, where are you going now? What's the goal? Where do you see it in the next 5 years? And how could people learn about you or get involved?
Yeah, I just want to share a little bit about this my experience right here. I've always loved art, but I had no direction with it. I never was able to find my place in, like, okay, what am I going to do with this? I was an abstract artist for a long time. I still am. And I love abstract because there's no rules, regulations. You can just do whatever you want. Whatever comes out of your heart, it's there. So I remember one time I was trying to find my place. I was trying to find God, right? I was trying to find God in the sense of, like, I know I got to rely on something greater than me, right? Mm. And I started going to, I found myself at church, and I was going by myself. And as I was going to church, I started really understanding, like, I have a gift, I have this art. Like, what am I to do with it? And I remember surrendering to God, and I said, God, show me, like, I have this gift. I have these business cards. I started this Empire Arts. Like, what am I going to do with this, I have, like, my dreams, I've always gone to restaurants and I can sit there and, man, one day I want to do paintings like that. Like, how did this artist get a hold of this owner, and how did they hire him? And so I would sit there, and I remember praying that one day I was laying it all down, and I said, Lord, guide me, because I don't know what to do with this. I have these business cards and I just have no direction. Like, just show me, open some doors for me. And I remember that day was very, like, it was a slow day for me. I went to work, and I got out of work, and I remember being at this red light, and I saw this restaurant that was being under construction. And I looked at my business cards, and I just felt like this tug on me, like, go in there and let them know that you do art. Let them know that you do art. Maybe they could use something in their remodeling, something new. And I was like, all right, the light was still red. And I'm like, I see the restaurant, and I'm like, I'm not a talkative person. I can't go in there and just, like, throw all this art at them, right? And for some reason, I just felt God say, you need to go in there and give them your business card. And I went in there, And I was talking to the lady in the front, and I said, "What's the owner here?" And she said, "Who's looking for him?" And I said, "My name's Efrain. I'm an artist." Hold on, give me a second. So she went to the back, and I guess she must have told him something like, "Hey, there's a guy out there that's an artist." She came back. She said, "Well, what kind of art do you do?" And I said, "Can I talk to him so that way I have my portfolio here? I have my portfolio, my business card, and everything." And I guess she went back, and this guy must have said, "Man, this guy is really determined to talk to me." So he said, "Come on back." And I went to the back, and everything was a mess. He took me to the bar area. And I said, "I do artwork. I don't know if you're interested in having some artwork done in your restaurant since you're remodeling." And I opened my portfolio and started showing him pictures of some abstract paintings and stuff like that. And he said, "You could do that? You could do that on my walls right here?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Okay, well, let me know how much would you quote me to do all this? And just do whatever you want. Just make it look colorful, make it look cool." And I was like, man, like, I get to do something that I want for this guy and prove to him that. And he said, "Depending how this bar area looks, I'll get you to paint the other side." And I said, "All right." I remember bringing my dad along to that job.
Wow.
And so I just went crazy with abstract. I did their logo right in the center. And he loved it. And he said, "Here, let's go this way. I want a painting right here." And I said, "Okay, well, what would you like there?" And he said, "I want a portrait." And mind you, I haven't done portraits. I don't do portraits.
Yeah.
I'm not even in that area. And I'm like, oh man. And for a second, I had this huge confidence. I said, "Yeah, I could do a portrait for you. What'd you like?" And he said, "I want Vicente Fernandez right there." And I was like, cool, Mexican artist.
Yeah.
Grew up listening to him all my life. And I have friends around me that they're muralists. I have a good friend of mine, he does portraits, and I'm like, okay. So in the back of my head, I'm like, cool, I'll say yes. And I'm going to call this guy.
Worst case, you bring this guy.
No, and just kind of like talk to him, call him, and get some, some information, advice. And so I told him, I said, yes, I'll do that for you. Just give me a couple of weeks. I got some stuff going on, but I'll come back and I'll do that for you. He goes, if you do that one and I like it, we'll do another one.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay. Man, I went home, did some research. I started, calling my friend, and I was like, "So where do you start? Do you start on the eyes and all this?" I had an idea of I've done tattoos. I did tattoos for a while, so I know about the patterns, and then doing some shading and following your designs and stuff like that. So, but this was on the wall with paintbrushes. I came in a week later, and I was ready. I was so much confident, and I knew that God was with me on that day. And he allowed me to paint that, and he loved it. He gave me another portrait to do, which was Jose Alfredo Jimenez. I did that one. He came over here. He said, "I want Cantinflas." And man, I did 5 portraits in that restaurant in a matter of a month.
Wow.
And I know that was my moment where God showed me, like, this is what you're going to do. And man, like, it was just that moment of like, that those moments where like, God's trying to tell you something is like, am I going to listen to him, or am I just going to kind of like, nah, it doesn't feel good. It's uncomfortable. Like, no, I'd rather do this. I'd rather go this way. And man, sure enough, I knew that I heard him right, and I went in there. And since I did that restaurant, the next restaurant, and it was the word of mouth, and I did another restaurant. And I've done a lot of restaurants in the IE where, it's just, and it's amazing. I remember sitting back looking at art. It's like, how do they get these jobs? Yeah. And now I know it's just by just, putting yourself out there. God will give you and he'll show you the signs. But like you said, you have to put in the work. Definitely. Yeah, he'll put it there in front of you. He'll open that door. But now you have to put in the work. Yeah. And he's showing you. And I remember that day when I painted Vicente Fernandez was a moment of like, I had just recently lost my mom. My mom and I used to drink coffee in the morning and listen to Vicente Fernandez. So a song came on. And that moment, I was still grieving through my mom's loss, my mom's passing. And I remember I stopped and I just got very emotional as I was painting. I was like, man, I wish my mom was here to see this. But you know what? I took that moment and I went to the car and I just let it all out. And God showed me, you know what? You honor your mom and your art. So now everything that I do, I always like, man, my mom would love this. I'll start throwing in some purple colors. When I get the freedom, I start putting in stuff that she loves. And I knew that God showed me in that moment, like, this is how you're going to honor your mom. Because I was still 30-something years old going to my mom, Mom, look at what I painted. Because since I was a kid, I would always run to my mom, Mom, look at what I drew. Oh, son, you're so beautiful. You're so talented. So I didn't have that anymore. Like, how can I go get my mom, bring her to dinner right here and show her my art? But, God showed me, and he allowed me to heal through that process and that painting. And now everywhere, I just recently did a beautiful, big Laker mural. My mom was a big Laker fan in the early 2000s, with Shaq and Kobe. And I remember I would walk in the room, she'd be like, watching the games. And she's like, man, this guy cannot make a basket. Talking about Shaq, he's free by himself. And, and so I knew, I sat back that moment. My son and I were working on that mural. And I sat back and I got very emotional because I was like, man, I wish I could have my mom walk in here and just look at, because, I made her go through so much, doing graffiti and, being out there late at night, her not being able to sleep because I would never come home, being out there in the streets. But God showed me that, just honor her and that. And so, I just went through, still going through a healing process through that. It's been, 5 years, but I put it in my art a lot. And that's because God showed me that this is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to make an impact. This is how, I gave you this gift, but it's for you to share it with the world, not for you to keep it.
Yeah.
And so my business it's founded on that. I really believe that God has allowed me to do this because let alone just being alcohol free and just, being sober, let alone start a business. And now here I am, like, I just left my job of 27 years. I was a machinist, a welder, and, just a precision grinder. And now I get to do this for a living. I get to go and meet clients and hear them out, their vision, and bring that on their wall. And, just work with so many different people. And, there's a scripture where it says, a man's gift will make room for him and bring him before great men, right? And along that line, paraphrasing it, but I believe that's what it says. Yeah, that's what it is. And I know now I have friends. I mean, my phone has contacts, with business people that I always ask questions. How's your story? How'd you start this? And they all came just like me.
Yeah.
From nothing.
Yeah.
And they were ready to throw in the towel, but because they didn't give up, now they have multiple restaurants. Now they have, multiple businesses.
Yeah.
But they were in the same situation I was.
Yeah.
And I'm no different. And so that inspires me because now my phone is like, I can call these business people and just ask them questions. And, it's such a blessing because I believe that.
Yeah.
God put me before great men. Why? Because I have a gift that I have and I'm sharing it with the world. So yeah. So and that's what's growing. Empire Arts, my vision is to have, just people along my side that are willing to just work hard and, have a few guys doing this job. I'm out there painting here or, just having, different crews out there, just, getting the walls ready, and we don't only do murals. We do pressure washing. We paint buildings. We will two-tone them. We don't only do art. We do sign painting as well. We do line striping as well. We're starting this second business. Parking lot striping. So we'll go in there and restripe all the. So my son and I were learning about ADU regulations and stuff like that. How to, it's just something that I know if I can't give that 100%, I know my son could take over that.
Yeah.
I already invested. We bought the machines. We bought all the stuff. So we're just now it's our turn to start pushing that. And I told him, I go, son, it's not for me. You could take on this. Work for yourself. Start your business.
Yeah.
Just go out there and knock on doors. Do the footwork, and it pays off. And
Absolutely.
Before you know it, you're 18 right now. By the time you're 22, 23, you'll have a business established for yourself. You'll have, you'll have something for yourself. And so that's my journey, and that's my goal, and that's what I'm also part of this 4 a.m. prayer call that we just completed a year. And it's a group of men that we get together every day at 4 a.m. for an hour and 20 minutes. And a friend of mine's called me a year ago, and he said, "Hey, E, man, God's putting in my heart to start some kind of prayer call, like where we could just have men get on there and we'll give the first fruit to the Lord." And I'm like, man, I'm on it. And as soon as I said, I got you, I was like, man, what did I do at 4 a.m.? I'm like, what? Yeah. But man, lo and behold, and thank God that we've been here. It's been a year. I was on the prayer call this morning.
Wow.
And, and it's all walks of life, men that's been through so much, and we just encourage each other. And that's very important as a man to have a support system like that, because we go through a lot. I mean, just starting this business, man, I go through so much where, my thoughts are just everywhere, trying to make this happen, right? Try to make it, it's kind of like, I'm gonna make it happen. But when do you make it happen? Every day is a trial and error. Every day you're working at it. Yeah. So I don't see like that ending point. I think it's always gonna be there. So we go through a lot as men. I recently lost a really good friend of mine, man. I lost him, and he was a huge impact to the community, to LA, and his organization. He had a nonprofit named Polly's Project, a really good friend of mine. I remember sitting in his truck, and he was going through some stuff, and I prayed over him and stuff like that, and he took his life. And so for me, it's like, he had a huge impact in his world, and he still is. His organization is still going, but I want to make sure that I'm around men that can be transparent. I want to be able to give the men the opportunity to say, "Hey, I've been through that. Like, how can I help you?" Yeah, right? And because mental health is a really strong issue and a really strong thing, and I think all men walks of life, they go through that, and it's a struggle. And if we have a support system, man, we walk out every day knowing that we have, good warriors on our back, right? That could sustain us too as well, even though God's our rock. But we have that system. So thank God, man, I completed that year, and it's really transformed my business, my life, the way I approach, make decisions, and having discernment whether this job is for me or not. Mm-hmm. It was such a great invoice. It was big, and I didn't get it, but you know what? There's a purpose why. There's a reason why I didn't get that.
Of course.
But you know what? God's has a different door to open.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And Empire Arts is it's gravitating towards that area of helping others with their gifts. Yeah. Open a facility, and there's a lot of things.
It's amazing, man. Yeah. We're here to support it. I just want to say, dude, you're already doing it. You say things when you said something like, some days it feels like how am I going to get there? It's like the job, or when is this journey going to show, like, there's no finish line. Yes. So whether you have 50 contracts, 10,000 contracts, 48 employees, or if it's just you and your son, I think everything that's happening, man, is what's happening, right? We get a short time on earth. Right. All of us are going to expire at some point, but then eternal life comes, So you mentioned your mother. Bro, it's happening. Your mother is seeing what you're doing. Yes. 100% no doubt, dude. That's the beauty. Think about how you're incorporating purple into the work, and you think about her. You think that song came on by accident? Yeah, no. You think that these things are by accident? They're 100% not by accident, brother. Yeah. I lost my mom too. It's going to be 2 years in March. And I think of I'm shooting a movie right now, and the writer had wrote a beautiful scene with that's a kind of a almost a reenactment of real life, what happened when my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And when I was shooting the scene, it was really, really intense, bro, because I'm I'm an actor, so I'm playing this role that's loosely based off me with this actress that flew in from New York who's loosely based off my mom. And my point to that is none of these things happened by accident. It wasn't an accident that this writer wrote that, or because the writer had knew my mother and had seen the experience that happened between us. So, dude, it's all happening, bro.
Yes.
You're a living testament and testimony to what happens with hard work. So I think you're right. Mental health, I just want to say we just lost a buddy. I'm a veteran. We just lost a buddy, too. You know, I don't know the numbers. I think a veteran commits suicide like every 7 minutes or something. It's like an incredible amount of numbers that, and you know, men's mental health, it's something that needs to be addressed more.
Yes.
I think more men commit suicide than women. Not that I'm making it a gender thing. Since we're talking about men. Yeah, you're right. A lot of men don't talk about things. They're not transparent about what's going on, and we lose a lot. So I love everything you're putting light on, man. Listen, is there anything you want to throw out? I ask every guest that comes on before we close out. I ask them to look into that camera because that camera's right on you. I want you to give a message to somebody that's listening that might relate to your story or might be seeing some light in your story. What message you have for them?
I just want to say that everything is possible. You know, everything's possible. I say find something that you're very passionate about. It doesn't matter what it is. Hone in on that. Develop that craft so good to where you could be a service to other people, and eventually you'll see the fruit of it. And just put in the hard work. Show up for who you are, and be good to others, and you'll be rewarded for that. And before you know it, it's going to be a journey, and it's going to be hard. But before you know it, you'll be at a different step, at a different level, and you'll come to realize that you're doing something great for yourself, for your family, and your community. But stay strong in it, and don't give up. You know, leave all the excuses at the door. You know, that's what it is. I just heard that quote, and I leave it to you. Leave the excuses at the door, because you know, we have the potential for so much more in this world.
You should never stress about the problems you be facing. Everybody in the mud on the struggle trying to make it. Look into the mirror and you see your motivation. Then you step into the world and you find your inspiration. I'm finding inspiration, and once I get a hold of it, I'll never get complacent. Look into the mirror and you see the motivation. Then you step into the world and you find your inspiration.